Warning, dry ice is dangerous. For real. Please observe all safety precautions when trying these demonstrations. Seriously.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. I was busy doing real science with these colorful bubbling liquids. Well, as long as you're here, let me tell you about a new series I call Home Science Hackeries. And tonight, we're going to talk about dry ice, just in time for the spooky holidays. We'll put the lightning in the edit. Probably. Yeah. Hello everybody and welcome to an eerie edition of Home Science Hackeries. My name is Brainy Bill from Bill Loudon Science, and tonight we're going to talk about dry ice, that seminal staple of any spooky party. From a bubbling cauldron to a gurgling cocktail, this stuff is the key to making Halloween spooky. So, first of all, what is dry ice? Well, before we even get started, you're going to notice I'm wearing very thick gloves, and that's because dry ice is ice. It's very, very cold. But when I introduce this at events, I always say that this ice is a special kind of ice because this ice never, ever melts. You could put this ice in the fire and it wouldn't melt. You could put it in a volcano and it wouldn't melt. You could put it on the surface of the sun and it wouldn't melt. And that's because this ice is not made out of water. Dry ice is made out of frozen carbon dioxide. It's the solid form of the gas that we breathe out. If you could catch your breath and make it very small and very, very cold, you would end up with dry ice. To keep it in this solid form, it has to be very, very cold. Regular ice freezes at around 32 degrees Fahrenheit, but the ice here in front of me is about 109.5 degrees below zero. So because it's made of a frozen gas, because it's not made out of a frozen liquid, it never melts. To melt would mean it would turn from a solid into a liquid. But as you can see, there is nothing dripping and running down my lab counter. Instead, what we see is we see a gas. Dry ice never melts because it can't melt. It turns directly from a solid into a gas, and that process has its own special name that is called sublimation. Dry ice usually runs about $1 a pound. You can get it at an ice supply store, typically somebody who sells bulk amounts of ice to restaurants or to bars. They'll usually sell it either in block form or in pellet form, which will look a little more like this. And depending on your application, you can get either one. They both are the same. When you handle dry ice, the number one concern is safety. You do not want to touch either form of this to your bare skin. And it makes sense if you think about it. The cells in your body are made up of mostly water. And if you expose them to a material that is more than 100 degrees below zero for long enough, it's going to start to freeze the water in the cells in your body. And of course, we call that frostbite. So make sure you've got some nice gloves. In fact, dry ice is a great way to find out if you have a tiny hole in your glove. In terms of storage, a cooler is the best option. You don't want to put this in the refrigerator or the freezer because it can mess with the sensors in the freezer. And of course, as you can see, it's always sublimating and creating more carbon dioxide. So if you're going to store it in a closed space like a car or a small room, make sure you've got a little bit of ventilation. I have many times experienced a trunk full of dry ice sitting in my car overnight. I get in the car the next morning, I turn the key in the ignition, I turn the radio on, and suddenly I realize I can't breathe. And that brings us to our second safety point when handling dry ice. This gas builds up like any other gas, and as you can see, it doesn't rise like water vapor. Instead, it sinks down. And so one big danger of carbon dioxide is if you breathe it in, it is going to just displace the oxygen in your lungs. It's going to literally sit down in your lungs, push the oxygen out, and then you won't be able to catch your breath. It will suffocate you. So always have proper ventilation. Store it somewhere safe. Store it somewhere where you can handle it with gloves. Now, what can you do with dry ice? Warm up some quarters in your hands and then using gloves, jam them into the dry ice. As the dry ice crystals sublimate, it'll cause the quarters to start to vibrate in a spooky fashion. The same principle works with any kind of metal. The bigger, the louder. Okay, that's probably enough of that one. Attach a balloon to the end of a funnel. Carefully add pulverized dry ice into the funnel so that it falls into the balloon. Take the balloon off the funnel, tie carefully, and wait. As the carbon dioxide sublimates, as it heats up, it will expand, causing the balloon to grow. This takes a while, so if you want to speed it up, you can hold it in your hand, but be careful, because that balloon gets cold. Add some warm water to a bottle or a cup, and then add some small pieces of dry ice. While it sublimates slowly in the air, adding it to hot water causes it to sublimate much quicker. You end up with a bubbling potion. This time, add a color tab or food dye and a healthy dose of dish soap. This will increase the surface tension of the water, so as the carbon dioxide tries to escape, it will be trapped into ghost bubbles. Add a small amount of dry ice to a bowl of warm water. Put a lot of dish soap on a dish towel and carefully try to stretch a soap membrane across the top of the bowl. This takes a little practice, but you will end up with a very large ghost bubble. Add a small amount of dry ice to a dish of warm water. Carefully hold a flame up to the gas. Because there is very little oxygen, the flame cannot survive in the carbon dioxide. Of course, the classic demonstration is to add some dry ice to a cauldron of warm water. The smaller pieces you use, the more dramatic your reaction will be, but the less time it will last. So there it is, everything you need to know to make a safe and bubbling spooky potion this season. My name is Brainy Bill from Bill Loudon Science, and before I go, I want to say a very special thank you to my first ever Patreon patrons, the Robinson family. I couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you very much. If anyone wants to check out the Patreon page, I'll put it down below, and I hope you guys have a very happy Halloween season. Thank you for joining me for this first episode of Home Science Hackeries.